Hi everyone, this is Ruby Powers with Powers Law Group, and this week we're going to talk about debunking immigration myths. There's a lot of things people use, and they think that this must be how it's done. A lot of times people just hear stories from their friends, their family. They might read some article and just think this is how it is. But so we're going to go over a couple of potential myths. Maybe you believe them, maybe you don't, and try to get the record straight. So, and feel free to chat, message anything, and hopefully you enjoy this topic, and we'll continue to do more of them. But just a little bit about me. My firm is 13 years old, and I've been practicing for a while, and I'm board certified in immigration in Texas, but because our firm is a full service immigration law firm with federal law, we can assist individuals with U.S. immigration anywhere in the U.S. and in the world, in fact. And so we help those with family-based, employment-based, immigration, humanitarian removal, all different types of visas to immigrate to the United States or even temporarily. Okay, so these are some of the myths. We're going to go debunk them. One is just like, we should call this the Mythbusters edition. We're going to go one by one and and see what we can do here. All right. And before I do that, I just want to say that, like, a lot of times people come to me and they say, well, surely this, or you should be able to do that. Like, one of the ones I also hear is, if you're married to a US citizen, then you should surely be able to get to stay here. Yeah, that's not true. Actually, there's a myriad of factors between if there's any other inadmissibilities, crimes, or a lot of deportations or in the history. So there's a lot of things. I usually say, take your common sense, and that the opposite of that is probably immigration. So sort of funny, not funny. And so just don't assume anything. That's another good, healthy advice. Don't assume anything. All right. So I think some people think that immigrants don't pay taxes, like maybe people who don't have a status here, and they might think that those who don't have status don't pay taxes. And when we say immigrants, like, that can be confusing too, because we could be immigrants who have valid status and those who don't. But let's just say the myth is that immigrants without status don't pay taxes. That's a myth, definitely a myth. A lot of individuals have tax ID numbers, which are legal to get tax ID numbers here in the United States, and they're using that for some tax purposes, and or if they had a social in the past that was a valid social, or maybe they're prescribing their work to a social that may not necessarily be theirs, there are being deducted taxes. So a lot of times, immigrants without status anymore, or who hadn't had status, are paying into taxes. And those who are even, let's say, asylum pending, and have work authorization, there's a lot of immigrants who are here in temporary protected status, asylum pending, immigration court, DACA. They have socials, they are paying into taxes. So this is definitely a myth. And in fact, some individuals who work and who don't have a social to their name, they might need to, once they get their paperwork in order, go have Social Security allocate all their work history and earnings to them. So maybe they used a fake social at some time in the past. That's not good. But if they had, and they get a real social that's actually theirs, attributed to them, then they would need to go make sure that they get credit for all of that. So I think a lot of people don't realize that. And when you're getting a little bit closer to retirement age, once you've had your status and you get a social, like, that's, don't wait till the last minute. But a lot of people are paying into taxes in all the different ways, locally, state, nationally, and a lot of them are not getting credit for it. And so it's important, when you have your paperwork and all your social and everything figured out later in life, whenever that is, to go make sure you get credit for all the work that you've done. So let's move on. So that's one thing. All right. So then there's this other one, and yeah, thanks, Fabiola. Yeah, assumption is exactly why so many things go wrong. We just, yeah, I sort of have a no assumption rule here in the office because it usually gets us into trouble if we have any assumptions. So next myth: all undocumented immigrants sneak across the Mexican border. Thanks, Daya, for putting all these myths together. So no, okay, no. So there's some people do cross over, and then a lot of times they are trying to avail themselves to the Border Patrol, and they're looking for them. Unfortunately, with the inconsistency with how the immigration law is interpreted and being enforced, especially at the border, right at this time, we're waiting for Title 42 to be discontinued, as it's expelling people based off of a public health provision. It should be discontinued May 23rd. A lot of people might realize that they can maybe try to go to the border and ask for asylum, but they might not be allowed in. They might be waiting their turn. In some ports of entry, there's being metered and waiting. Metering sort of like waiting their turn to be allowed in. Now, some others are maybe come in and then they look for the CBP and they want to avail themselves. But a lot of individuals that are here, of the 10 or 11 million that don't have a status, it was that they might have come in on a visa of some sort and then overstayed it. And then so maybe they were eligible for something else. And we've helped many individuals along those lines. So even though people might think that a lot of people are sneaking over, I'll just tell you that is very hard to do. Having being an immigration attorney, I don't really hear many people sneaking over and not being caught. So the border security really is working, but also that's really not how we have the amount of those without status or documentation here in the country. And I know that we're doing Mythbusters here, but really the whole point is to educate, and also I'm not condoning like that any of this is good stuff. I mean, we really need to have reform, and I'm actually participating in the American Immigration Lawyers Association's National Day of Action today. So in between calls and consults and preps, I'm having meetings with our elected officials to try to make change. So next myth: immigrants are coming to the U.S. to obtain welfare and other benefits. Oh my goodness. Okay. First of all, like, you can't get most of these benefits without a social security number. And most people who don't have a status don't have a social security number. They used to give them out a lot easier, somewhere before 2001 or so. I can't remember what that cutoff, maybe 2000. But after that, an individual doesn't get a social unless they have work authorization or some other status that allows them to be issued a social security. If you don't have a social security number, almost none of these things are available. It might depend on the county, the city, the state. Some localities are a little bit more lenient, but for when we're talking about federal, the undocumented immigrants, those without status, are not eligible for federal public benefits. In addition, most immigrants have lawful status are not entitled to these benefits because they have been in the country for 5 years or longer. And so, a lot of these other benefits depend on lots of different factors, and including your status. And some of them, you have to have legal permanent resident status, or if you've been a legal permanent resident, you get kicked off of a program, and if you haven't become a citizen within a certain amount of time. So, many studies have shown that on average, immigrants pay more in taxes than they receive in benefits. That goes back to one of our other myths we were talking about, how a lot of people are paying in. So that is a true statement, and they are definitely paying into taxes. So this is another myth. We're busting them one at a time here. Okay. Immigrants are coming to the U.S. for the express purpose of having children here. Okay. So the U.S. is, we have jus solis and jus sanguinis. Yes, I know some of those terms. That's funny, but it's basically about citizenship. So solis means that if you're born here on the soil, you are a U.S. citizen, with very, very, very few exceptions. And so people refer to this as the birthright citizenship. So not all countries do this, because we have I have a U.S. centric view a lot of times. I think that a lot of countries do that, but I actually am not that US centric, because I have clients from all over and I've been doing immigration for quite a while. So, but US citizens might think like this, that birthright citizenship is everywhere. US is one of few countries where it's like that. Now, if an individual does come here and has a child here, maybe they don't have status, or they have a tourist status, or whatever they may be, and their child is born here, very teeny weeny exceptions, that child is a U.S. citizen by birthright citizenship. And so, but some people are like, oh, well, then automatically that kid can petition for their parent. No. Actually, U.S. citizens cannot petition for a green card or legal permanent residency for their foreign parent until they turn 21. So that's a huge misconception. And there's even more misconception. A lot of people think that, okay, well, I have a 21-year-old American child, now they can petition for me. Well, if they enter without status, or they have any misrepresentations or fraud or serious crimes, they thanks, Jaime. They can definitely keep you from being able to finish the whole process. So it's not a slam dunk just by having a U.S. citizen 21-year-old child. So that is definitely another myth. And I didn't say the jus sanguinis, which means by blood. So you could be born abroad to U.S. citizen parents, or one U.S. citizen parent. It's all depending on when you were born, whether the parents were married, which parent was a citizen, how much time that parent lived in the United States, and they could pass on citizenship to that child. It gets really complicated, actually, but I really love those cases and try to help people. A lot of times people are citizens and they don't even know it. So let's move on. Oh my goodness. Next myth. So immigrants take jobs from native born residents. Okay. Well, first of all, there is like a lot of work to be done right now. And honestly, I think I've talked to every business owner I know can't find anybody to do the work we need to get done. And we have like the highest, like the lowest unemployment, I think I read, since like 1950 or something crazy. So immigrants do not generally compete with US born workers. They, usually compete with the migrants who came before them. I mean, it's a combination, because we've got certain skill, lower skilled and higher skilled. It's a combination. We cannot lump immigrants all in one category. But if you look at the statistics, they are helping supplement and helping fill in where there is need, and they're not taking the jobs from the native born residents or US citizens. And whether it's like a low skilled, those positions, we cannot get enough of them. In Quebec, that we actually increased the H2A, H2B visa allotment recently. And then if it's for the skilled and educated, we can't get enough of them. There were so many people applying for the H-1Bs this last year. I mean, for this fiscal year, just that closed up this last month. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of need right now. This myth is not true. Okay. Oh my goodness. Immigrants are bringing a crime wave to the United States. Okay. No. So there's lots of research that shows immigrants are less likely to commit serious crimes. And in fact, if they did, I mean, like, let's talk DACA, for example, deferred action for childhood arrivals. Like, if you get a DWI, you lose DACA. Like, that's pretty harsh, right? I mean, I'm not saying I approve of DWIs, but if that happened to a US citizen, they don't lose their status. And so there are a lot of consequences to crimes, which we call crimigration. And so that higher rates of immigration are associated with lower rates of violent crime and property crime. And so if you really look at the statistics, you'll find that that immigrants are generally have less serious crimes, less crimes, and they're just with so many consequences. I know that that many immigrants are do everything by the book because they're just so afraid that they would have any issues, even if they're legal permanent residents. They're afraid because they don't want to lose their status. All right, so hopefully we covered some myths, and maybe we could keep up this Mythbusters theme every once in a while as we collect them through our day-to-day and get that information out to you. So if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us. We've got our immigration updates on Tuesdays, 5 Central, and we try to sum up the whole week. Sometimes there's a lot of immigration news. And then we're also doing these short, brief little chats every Wednesday at 11 Central here on LinkedIn and all our other locations. But you can find us all these different places, including Twitter at Powers Immigration Lawyer. We're putting late breaking, small, short videos about what's going on. There's a lot going on in the world: Title 42, TPSs, Ukraine, a lot of movement, the prosecutorial discretion memo going to effect, Doyle memo going to effect this last Monday. So if you want to just hook up with us somewhere on social media, and you'll get all the latest and greatest information. And we also send out a newsletter in English and Spanish every other week. And we're a full service immigration law firm here in Houston. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.